I should say as well. So I'm here talking with Diana Kreikamp. Is that right? Have I got it right
Yes,
this
that's
time? I
right.
had a little bit of coaching earlier. Um, who's written this rather amazing book called The Amduat, The Great Awakening, which I'm very lucky to have been involved with. I count myself as very lucky as being involved with the publishing of and the creation of. And so we're gonna talk about that. To start then, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know I know who you are, right? But just for the sake of people, other people listening, tell me about yourself.
Well, I was born in the Netherlands, where I still live with my husband, and I live in on some kind of an island in the middle of the Netherlands, and it's the polder, so it is land reclaimed from the sea. So technically, I live on the bottom of the sea. So
Yeah.
that's quite, oh, well, interesting. So I have two cats, and their names are Seti and Senud. And Seti is, of course, named after the very famous pharaoh Seti the First, one of my favorites. And Senud, her name, is derived from the ancient Egyptian word Senu, and it means companion.
Yeah.
But she is a female cat, so it is Senu with a female ending, which makes it Senud. Well, they are great, those cats.
Right.
And usually, or yeah, almost every day, I start my day with meditation. And afterwards, I start writing. And well, most of the days I'm writing, and the rest of the time I'm making art several times a day. And I also practice writing and reading hieroglyphs. Writing and reading, it's kind well, it is quite difficult, and there is always room for improvement. So yeah, and I really love doing that. I always like it. When I have some kind of a mood, I start just translating, and I'm just happy. So that works.
Right.
Yeah, and well,
What do you use? What do you use for the hieroglyphs? Did you do a course, or have you got a special book that you use?
oh yes, I did a course, and I use several books. I use the books of Allen,
Oh,
James Allen.
because
They
he's
are
really
great, and I use well, just the ancient text, the pyramid text, the coffin text. There are my favorites.
right.
So you can look it up on the internet, and then you can start. There are the hieroglyphs, and you can start translating.
Yeah.
So, and there are a lot of coffin texts. So, well,
You keep
quite
you
busy.
busy. It'll keep you busy.
Yeah.
No, it's fun. So I have to, so you say you live on a polder. You see, when
Yeah.
at school we learned that funny word polder for some reason.
Oh,
I don't know
really?
why, right? It's something. Yeah, you reminded me. It's something to do with Holland. It's reclaimed land or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah.
In the,
Reclaimed lands. And
so it's
actually,
an island. Well, it's like that the Egyptian island in the middle of the kind of of the flood or something. Then really.
wow, that would be great.
If
That
you've
would
got
be
a lot of
great.
math. Anyway, go on, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Is there more to tell?
Well, I like to travel.
You like
Yeah.
to travel?
Yeah, I really like to travel. And my favorite place is, of course, Egypt.
Yeah,
But I also like to travel to the East and to the States. So
right.
yeah, I really like to, yeah, meet other people from other cultures. I always think it's quite interesting to talk to them and to see their different backgrounds. It's very
Right.
fascinating.
So, how many times did you go to Egypt in the course of the writing of the and researching of your book?
I think five times, four times. Yeah.
That's quite a lot. What? And you spent most of your time in the Valley of the Kings?
Yeah, and the tombs of the nobles, and also Abydos is my favorite place, and Dendera, and I've been to Edfu, yeah, Esna.
Right. And you just kind of, I mean, I got this idea from other people as well that if you go to these places, you should just photograph every surface, really, everything, because it's all gonna be, even though you think it's just too much, really. I mean, Edfu's got so many texts and stuff on it that
So
you
interesting.
can't really get your head around it. I think most people just end up ignoring it. But later you realise actually some of those things on the wall that were really they're really interesting, which is kind of a whole life just trying to work out what they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so you ended up with the book, which you've got a copy of there, which is the Amduat.
Yep.
What else? I was going to say, what do, a person like you who writes a book about this, would you call yourself a kind of a practitioner of the Egyptian religion, or a priest, or a priestess, or how would you kind
Um,
of what do you identify with in terms of your spiritual,
um,
you know?
I am tempted to say that I'm a priest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think those labels put you in a box and it narrows your potential and prevent growth into new experiences. So, well, what I can say, I explored some of those things, the magician, seer, ritualist, all those things. And that expanded my vision from the unseen and the seen world. And for me, those labels like witch or whatever, um, it is just a label, and I see it just like some kind of a robe, so you can wear it. I'm not a robe, but I just wear it when I feel to do so, and when it adds a value to my activities. Yes.
So primarily you say you're a priest. What about the other things that people often identify? Would you say that you're a magician?
Oh, yes, for sure.
A magician. What about? I'll throw my whole list in. What about witch? Would you count as a witch? I mean, they say that in Egyptian culture, this is disputed, that they didn't really have any witches. Not in the sense that we use the term witch in European sort of tradition. That they didn't really have that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, you could still be if you want. Would you call yourself a witch or a shaman maybe, or you
Oh, a
know?
shaman, a magician. Yeah, yeah.
You're avoiding the term witch, so you wouldn't call yourself a witch. What
No.
about astrology? Do you practice this? Because the Egyptians are very famous for their astrology and astronomy and stuff. Is that something that you look at as well? I know in the book, which we'll talk about in a minute, I suppose the whole theme of the book, in a way, even though it's kind of going underground, is to do with the sky and the stars. That's quite an important sort of aspect of the book, really. It's something because that's where you're heading for, I suppose, in some way. Would that be right? Do you think?
Yeah.
So, would you call it? Do you think that's astrology, or were the Egyptians into astrology, or is it mainly astronomy? You think that they're doing?
Well, maybe a combination of both. I
Yeah.
think that they had the combination together. Nowadays, we have it's separated. You have the astrology and astronomy. But I think that they had a mix of it,
Mm.
both sides.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, I suppose we better talk about the book. We mentioned it. So you've written this book, which is a major, I could say, a major piece of work. I said to you, I thought it was a kind of cultural event, really, which I think, that's sort of the thing with Ronald Hutton. Ronald Hutton's given you quite a nice uh, one-line endorsement, really.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was a. I know people might think, oh well, he's always so generous, right? He's incredibly generous, one of the top scholars in the world. But I have to say, he is always very generous and supportive of other people's work, especially of the people. I suppose you would say from the practitioner scholar category. He's very good, but. I kind of had this feeling that he would see it, that straight away that it's not just because obviously he said, didn't he? He gets sent a lot of books, right? And then people ask him to kind of do that, to say, "Oh, look, give us an opinion on this." Uh, or say something nice about it. So and everything, because he usually does. But I kind of had a feeling that he would sort of sense that he really needed this book.
Oh, really? Well, I hope
No,
so.
I think that's true because it doesn't have, to have that. Well, I'm saying just how I saw it. I think there's something very, very special about this subject matter. So go on, tell us a little bit about the book. What brought you to? What does it mean? The book is called Amduat.
Yeah.
Tell me, start by telling me what does that mean, and what is that?
Well, the Underworld is one of the ancient Egyptian books of the afterlife. And the Amduat means the book of the hidden chamber, or you can also translate it, what is in the Duat. And the Duat is the realm where the souls of the deceased dwell after death. And the Amduat, tells the story of the 12-hour journey of the sun god Ra through the realm of the Duat. And it begins at the moment as the sun sets beneath the horizon of the west at the end of the day. And the light of the sun is completely extinguished and the sun has died. So he descends into the Duat and then he starts his travel through the 12 hours. And after 12 hours, the sun rises above the horizon of the east as a brilliant shining light. So the interesting thing of the Amduat is that it reveals the story, what happens in the afterlife by text and illustration. So it reveals the whole journey after death. And that is something we are all curious about. And the Amduat demonstrates that there is no thing as death. Death is just a portal to a new phase and to a new life. So yeah, that's fascinating. I think it's fascinating.
Well, most people, I think if you mention the idea of Egyptian text, they will say the Book of the Dead, right? Everybody's heard of this thing called the Book of the Dead. Um, is why not the Book of the Dead then? What do you think?
Oh,
The Amduat is better, or
no, it's different. I can tell you that I did research on the Underworld, and at some point I decided that the research with your intellect was not enough. You
Hmm.
had to go deep into it to understand it. So I decided to meditate on it, and that's what I did. And I also meditated on the Book of the Dead to see the difference between the both of them. And there is quite a difference between it. The Underworld is about knowledge, gaining knowledge about yourself, about the world, about everything. And the Book of the Dead, it is more a book of spells. So, you know that the Underworld, explains the journey after life. And to do that journey, you take the Book of the Dead with you, and you have all those spells on your way when you had all those confrontations with all those demons and all those forces, and you can use those spells. And I have meditated on those spells, and there are really very powerful spells, but it is different. It is not the same as the Amduat.
Well, in a nutshell, is the Amduat a better book or?
No, 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 better, no. They are both very interesting, but the Amduat is just, what can I say about it? The Amduat is the journey in itself, and
Hmm.
that is really interesting. And the Book of the Dead are just the spells. So it's not about the journey, it's about all those spells you can use. And I felt a lot of difference meditating on it. You know, if you meditate on the Amduat, you descend in your own subconsciousness. You descend in your own deep self. And with the Book of the Dead, that is not the case. It's different. No, that's not what happens then.
some point in the future. Okay, so we're talking about the Amduat. So well, first then, tell me this got this very strange title, a strange title to me, the Amduat. Tell me what is the literal meaning of the book, because a lot of people won't be very. I should say, obviously, most of us in the West who are interested in this sort of stuff, we've only probably ever heard of one book from ancient Egypt, which is the Book of the Dead. I don't even know, Book of the Dead. I don't know what its Egyptian name is offhand, but so the Amduat, it doesn't sound. It's not exactly a household term. So this is one of the wonderful things about this book. It's something new. But what does it actually mean, the Amduat?
The Amduat, it means what is in the Duat.
Yeah.
So, and the Duat is the realm where the souls of the deceased dwell. So.
And I should say, so Amduat, right? You say what is in the Duat. So I can see the Duat bit. So the Am bit, that means what is in.
Yeah, what is in.
That's how the language works.
Yeah.
No, it sounds strange, but I'm always very fascinated by the way the words mean. So, what the Amduat? Where does it actually come from then? In Egypt itself, where does the book come from?
Well, we found it in the tombs.
Yeah.
And it was carved on the walls of and painted of the walls of the tombs of the pharaohs. And it's in later times it was also used for non-royal people to decorate the coffins with. And also it is found on papyri. So yeah, that's how we found it.
Well, when you say it was found in the tombs, do you mean it was actually, because I believe that something like, say, the Book of the Dead, you actually find it as a physical book, not a book in, like your wonderful example, but as a sort of rolled up scroll as kind of massive length, and actually deposited in the tombs, maybe sort of the person in the coffin is holding onto it or something. Is that the sort of way the Amduat comes down to us? How we discovered it? Is it actually a physical scroll put in the tombs, or is it?
No, it's carved and painted on the walls.
It's actually the paint, the stuff painted on the walls in the tombs.
Yes.
And is this any tomb, or these are the tombs in the Valley of the Kings?
Well, it is, yes, the Valley of the Kings, and it was exclusively for the pharaoh. But there was one exception of a non-royal person, and that was Uzamun. And he was the vizier of Thutmose III and Hatshepsut. And, well, it still makes me wonder, why on earth did he have the Duat on the walls of his tombs? Why? Why had he access to it? Well, we don't know. But he was the exception.
Sorry, can you give me that name again? Was that Senamut?
Uzamun.
Oh, yeah, okay. And he was a non-royal, he was a vizier, so he's some sort of, I don't know what, like a prime minister or something like that.
Yes, something like that.
And he had a copy of this book as well.
Yeah.
So, which is funny, I visited the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, and because of the rather amazing pictures, this thing, but it goes, you think, I mean, after a while you think, yeah, kind of amazing, it goes on and all this amazing images. You don't really think of them as books. You just think it's decoration or something. But these are actual books, aren't they, painted on the walls of the tombers?
Yes, they are.
And when you see your book,
painted on the wall?
I should say it's over 400 pages long, all right. The first 100 pages of which is the kind of the context of the whole thing. But you in a sense, big as the tombs are, you don't really expect that you're going to end up with a book of this length, right, from the tombs. That's rather an extraordinary thing, really. Don't you think? I mean, that's the sort of extraordinary thing about all the Egyptian culture. It's almost like they paint all of their most important books in plain sight all over the place.
Yeah, great.
We just, as tourists and everything, I mean, that's why we need people like you to kind of bring it to us. It goes over our heads most of the time. We just think sensory overload. We don't really understand what we're seeing. But in fact, these are books. Now, the the book itself, is this for everybody, or is it just for a special group of people in Egypt?
It was for the pharaoh, and yeah, he was. It was for the pharaoh. He was the one who made the journey through the Duat, and so it was not for the common people. You know, the pharaoh was seen as a living god, so he was an example for all, and he made the journey through the afterlife, to the journey, as some kind of a guiding light for his people. And he made the journey after life, and the purpose was to obtain immortality. So it was a very important event. But when the pharaoh would succeed, he was reborn in the afterlife, and then death was transformed into life. So it was the pharaoh who ensured that the cycle of death and life and rebirth would continue. So life would continue, and that was really important. But this is just one side of the story, because the real purpose is beneath this story. And yes, it was about rebirth and about death, but not in the afterlife. It was about rebirth, of a kind of awakening into life itself. And the pharaoh was actually not the only one who had access to this knowledge. There was a group of highly trained priests, and the pharaoh belonged to that group, and they had access to the duat, and they worked with it. So they had many years of training, and when they had reached the required level, the candidates could make the journey to the 12 hours of the night, and that was the highest level of initiation. So, and that was called the Great Awakening. And the candidate had to lay for 3 days and 3 nights in a sarcophagus. And he had to connect with his higher being, a sort of total surrendering. And that would lead to the awakening into a higher state of consciousness. So that was the real purpose. And of course, you can use it after life as well.
So you're saying that the book, which presumably people didn't know about until comparatively recently, because if it's a book that's sealed up within a tomb, its primary purpose is not just for one, all right, very important person in terms of Egyptian culture, which is the king or the pharaoh. It's not just for their purpose, because I mean, if it was, in a way, you kind of think, oh, well, why would that be important to us? It's just a very personal thing for them. But you're saying it goes a bit broader than that. In fact, that probably wasn't its main purpose at all. It's got something other than just for the king. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's right. And you know, those priests, they were servants and mediators of the gods. That was their life purpose, and it was their task to serve and teach and to help others. So they want to be the best of their abilities to serve the gods, and that's why they also made the journey to transform themselves in a higher state of consciousness, so they were able to do their task as their best, at their best of their ability.
Okay, but I mean, I try to be cynical about this, but say the king himself, I don't know, somehow we've got a royal family in this country, and not to be disrespectful or anything, but somehow you kind of think that aristocrats and rulers, their main thing is in the mundane world, really, is ruling, and doing practical things and running the country. You don't really think about kings as being, or queens, I suppose, as being intellectual or deep people in a way. They're kind of, you think of them as very practical people or warrior types or whatever. So was it something that the king really did, or is it, or was it maybe they were expected to kind of have this thing? Do you get some insight into kingship itself? Do you really think that they were sort of special people, the Egyptian kings?
Well, I think, yes, in the beginning they were really, yeah. So, of course they had to rule the country, but they also had to, they were gods themselves, and they had to serve the gods to protect their country against chaos.
Mm.
And so you have to mediate with the gods. So, and that was what the priest had to do also. So it's not like in our days that you just on earth doing your thing, but the pharaoh had to do on the earth and in the other life.
So the purpose of this book then, is it just for the person, the deceased? Is that its main function, is to sort of help the king to be, I don't know, to be a better king and to kind of I don't know what, maybe they're supposed to come back at some point in their children and rule us. Is that the primarily the purpose of the Amduat, or you think it might have some wider significance within Egyptian society and therefore for us?
Yeah, well, it's about awakening into a greater being. So it's about a heightening of the consciousness. So, and that is not limited to a journey after death. This is something you can do in life as well.
So you think the book is mainly for the living?
Yeah, it's for the living, yeah. And you can use it also when you're at the end of your life, but
Yeah.
you certainly can use it now.
Well, I always think that that's the purpose of a lot of religious books, is that I suppose they're preparing you for the final journey in some sense, when you're going to maybe make some special transition. But probably equally as important is the use in by the living, really, to reach some sort of enlightened state, which is what we're getting at. So you're really going with the idea that the book, the Amduat, which is the focus, is the basis of some sort of mystery cult within ancient Egypt. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true.
And I know that that's, for some people, that's quite a controversial idea. They're going to think it's, I don't know what the right word. They're going to think it maybe it's sentimental, or it's some sort of projection of what we'd like to be there, or within the Egyptian culture. Is there any kind of evidence for that, or was this a kind of, how did you come upon that solution? That conclusion that there must have been some sort of mystery cult in ancient Egypt based around this text. What was your reasoning for that?
Well, yeah, well, a sort inner inspiration,
Yeah,
yeah, a sort inner knowledge, yeah,
it was an intuition. It was an intuition
yeah,
from reading the book, reading this text in such detail itself.
yeah, and
Uh,
also reading the coffin text and the pyramid text, yeah.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit, just to get us a little bit about yourself then? What was the process in which you actually wrote this book? It took you a long time, I believe, to sort of assemble all this material. What set you off on that journey uh, of discovery to the Amduat in the first place? What was it that got you going?
Oh, well, I at the moment that I joined Jezreel, I got interested in the ancient Egyptian tradition and their gods and their myths, and I really loved reading about those stories. And I knew a little bit about that there was a Book of the Dead, but it was also, well, basic knowledge. But at a moment, I got this inner inspiration that I had to work with the Amduat. But I didn't know anything about it, and I thought that I misheard the word. I was thinking, am I supposed to do something? Am I doing what? Or I really didn't know. I didn't know how to pronounce it. I didn't know how to spell it. So I tried to look it up on the internet, but I didn't know how to write it. So nothing makes sense. So at some point, I had visited a friend, and we were talking about books and stuff, and I was talking about my am doing what problem, and he said to me, I think I know what you mean, it's this, and he showed me the book of the Amduat. And the moment I saw that book, it hit me right in the face. I thought, oh my God, this is it. I have to do something with it. So I bought a copy and I started research, and well, I never stopped doing research. I still do.
Because other versions, earlier versions of the text, you get a kind of skeleton version of the text, really, very, very basic, which I guess I don't know which edition it was, right? That would be difficult to make sense of, really. A lot of these Egyptian texts are incredibly difficult to kind of, for a modern person to see what the mystery is. And that's one of the most wonderful things about your book, really, that you really bring to life something in incredible detail that for most people is a complete mystery. So you began to study it. What you say the word, did it just pop into your head, or was it something that someone said in a session? It just literally popped into your head.
Yeah, it popped in my head. Yes,
Well,
and
you were studying
it
the Book of
happens.
the Dead and other stuff, and suddenly had this into it. Oh, there's this other book.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an amazing story. Because actually, the books themselves are very. I think I'm right in the books, the Amduat, and some of these what you call the books of the underworld. They're very, very secretive in Egypt itself, right? That they were say when we say they're in tombs, we take that for granted now because we've smashed all the tombs out and we've opened them up and we see absolutely everything. And so the idea that these were actually, once they sealed it up, nobody was going to ever see that again for thousands of years.
no.
But now they do. Now we see them, but we think, oh, I don't know what to make of that. Really, it's such a strange set of ideas, and for anybody to sort of bring it to life like that. So this was at the beginning of your journey. I think you mentioned the organisation. Maybe you're pronouncing it slightly different. Which is it the servants of the light or
Service for
servants of
life.
the light?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that organisation and what it is?
Well, it's a mystery school, and they teach the occult science, and they work with the Kabbalah,
Mm.
and you learn all sorts of techniques like meditation, visualization, and you learn to work with the Kabbalah. You know, the Kabbalah is a very interesting system to work with. And I use the same tools to work with the Amduat because the Amduat is just another system, and you can use the same tools to journey through it and to understand it.
But what has the Kabbalah really got to do with ancient Egypt, or is there some sort of connection, or is it just some sort of basic? What is it about them that sort of connects them in that way then?
Well, I don't. It is not the connection. It is just the way how you work with a certain system.
Yeah.
And the Amduat is different. It's totally different from the Kabbalah. There are two different systems, but you can use the same tools and techniques to explore them.
So when you talk about system, you mean I know from the book you kind of you talk quite a bit about the kind of group of what you call elite priests, which what I should say when you say priests, do you mean priests and men and women? You mean priests and priestesses, or was it just confined to men? The sort of
No,
these
both.
mysteries. This is a mixed mystery from the ancient world, and you talk about them as some sort of elite. Uh, can you say, when people sort of talk about elites and stuff like that, like when they talk about the kings and the royal tombs and all the rest, how, for someone like myself, right, coming from who's a modern person, I always think when people talk about elites, I can't help it. I always feel a little bit excluded by that idea. Um, but that's not what you're saying, is it? It's elite. In what sense is it elite? Is it still, because you've written it as a book now, right? Is it available or accessible for anybody who wants to look at this, or is it only for a special group of people?
My book, you mean?
Or these ideas?
No, I think you need some experience with meditation, visualization, and you have to know how to work with this system. But I think that anybody who is trained in kind of techniques can work with it. Yes, I think it's accessible for everybody who wants to do this.
Can you talk us a little bit through then, which is your favourite bit of this book? I should say, right, so that anybody who's watching this is a kind of enormous book of 400 pages, which takes us on an incredible journey from, I suppose you would say, from sunset to sunrise. I mean, what I would call the night journey, really. And it's a long, elaborate journey, much more detailed and special than you were expecting. The mysteries of consciousness really are all kind of laid out in this book. I mean, the only thing I can think of a comparable is it's almost like in the Hindu text they explore the nature of consciousness and the spiritual journey in incredible sophistication and detail. And I don't know. I never, to be honest, even though I studied Egypt, I never really expected that there would be such a level of meaning and sophistication in an Egyptian text before. I think that was kind of one of the. That's a funny admission, isn't it? But it's just these things that you've really opened my eyes, really, to the possibility of an Egyptian culture. But so it's a long journey from sunset when the person either is in the tomb, or somehow when it's almost like when you're going to sleep, or when you're sort of going the first moments you're entering into the underworld. I want to say, and we go on this sort of journey right down deep, and it's almost like we're kind of the text almost takes us apart, right, step by step by step. Can you say, is there a particular part of the book that is the most significant for you, or your favorite bit of the whole book?
Yeah, it is. It's the 5th hour of the night. And you can see on the left riverbank is the god Anubis standing. Yes, there it is, in the middle. You see a chest, and Anubis is standing before the chest. And on either side of the chest there are 2 birds, and that are the goddesses Isis and Nephthys in their form of birds. And the sun god has to go through the chest straight down to the cavern of Sokar, and it's in the deepest part of the Duat. And there it all happens. Then at that moment the sun god has to transform that into life. So he has that secret meeting with Osiris, and he's able to rekindle the very first spark of light. So the sun god knows that it is just a matter of life and death, and that is why he asked the goddesses as Isis and Nephthys to protect him. And it's a beautiful, beautiful text, and it says, "May your voice be loud and your throat be truthful. May you spread your wings and do your duties. May you guard your chest. May this image you guard be concealed, that I may pass by you in peace." And it's beautiful. It really is.
It's a very beautiful piece, and I'll find out in the 5th hour. I held the book out there for a rather long time, but I'm always very struck by Egyptian cultural material that is so visual. It's almost like it's for different types of personality, really. Obviously some people like a lot of words and are very literate. But I think there's also an idea that maybe some people are not so good at reading as others in ancient Egypt and as now. So it's almost like the visual aid, the pictures, the visual stuff is there at the beginning of each hour to kind of. So you look at that, and that's almost like an initiation in itself. And you look at these very, very evocative pictures that at the beginning of each each chapter in this book, there's a kind of sort of what they call the picture of the hour. There are 12 hours.
Yeah, the illustration.
The main illustration, which would have been painted on the tomb, and then where would the text have been? Would the text have been in a separate bit, or is it somehow fitted around all these?
It is mostly at the left side in rows, or sometimes above it.
Okay, so we get the picture, and then in the book, and presumably in your journey into the tomb, it's just funny because the book he would have probably written. It would have somehow been like going into the tomb, because these tombs, the entrance to these tombs is an incredibly long passageway, and we get the explanation and the full detail of all these different mysterious characters, which, look, I know in practice there's so many of them. It's going to take me, that one little image now is always going to stick in my mind of the chest, because I'm looking at that, I would never have realised that was the chest. It's a very strange. It looks like a pot with the two birds on it, but you see, that is incredible. That is incredible, really.
Actually, the text I was saying to you, it's on the front cover.
Yeah.
You know, it's on the illustration. That is the text I told you. You know, the hieroglyphs.
The hieroglyphs there. Yeah. I'll read it again for me. Go on.
Oh, may your voice be loud and your throat truthful. May you spread your wings and do your duties. May you guard your chest, and may this image you guard be concealed, that I may pass by you in peace. That's written there above Anubis.
That's rather wonderful. I know, right? There's so many things about this book that I like, and the painting on the cover is actually one of your own paintings.
Yeah, it's hanging on the wall.
The hieroglyphs, and we made a particular point of making sure that the hieroglyphs were on the cover. You see, it's even more special. It's almost like a talisman of whatever. And we hit upon kind of the color blue, because the blue is, I don't know, in the end, the colour of the Amduat itself, right? And of the unconscious and all the rest. So it kind of fits. So there you go. So it's an amazing journey to sort of, for anybody who's going to, I envy you, really. I mean, I say, I'm probably going to take the rest of my life, right, journeying through this book, because it's so fascinating. One of the things that kind of, I should have slightly freaked me out about the book, really, you know, and the idea of Underworld Journeys, is that included in that image, but it's more in some of the other images, is that there's always quite a lot of snakes, right, in the Egyptian sort of pictures, and that's scary, isn't it? Is that meant to be scary?
Well, the snakes are the symbol of duality. You know, a snake can live under the ground, and it's quite scary, and it can bite you, and it can hurt you. But the other side is that the snake is also a guardian into sacred places. So it has a dual task in the duat. You know, there are snakes, there are of good nature, and snakes are of bad nature. And that's what the duat is about. The duat is about the two sides. So, and that's why there are all so much snakes. And the snake is always also the symbol of transformation. And that's what happens in the duat. The sun god transforms into a renewed form.
As you were speaking, I was just counting the number of snakes just in this one picture, and at least half a dozen of them. And some seem to have multiple heads and stuff.
The fourth hour is crawling with snakes.
The fourth hour,
yeah.
You see, the fourth hour has even more snakes.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip back and have a look. I don't know. Yeah, there's quite a few of them. There's a winged snake as well.
Oh yeah, with legs. Yeah.
I kind of think that I mean, you know, most people are a little bit phobic about snakes and stuff like that. But I suppose it's part of the energy of the underworld. You know, that it's got. It could be a fearful place in some way.
It's quite scary. It is, yes, because it's the unknown.
Yeah.
And you know, when I first started I just had that idea that I want to do more with the Amduat, so I decided to meditate on it. And that was quite frightening thing for me because if you meditate and you visualize and you're focused really hard, the possibility is that it will manifest into your life.
Uh-huh.
So what would happen if I start meditating on the Amduat? Would I evoke my own death? So
Right.
that was the most scary part. Yeah, I had to go through. So, but I traveled the first round and a second and a third. Well, I'm still alive.
You're still alive.
Yes.
But did it have an effect on the meditations as you did this over the years? Did all
Oh,
right,
yeah.
you're still alive, but did it have a manifestation in your physical life? Some of the things, some of these images and things that you encountered?
Yes, yes, yes. If you start meditating on it, then in a way the Amduat opens to you and it's gonna manifest into your life. So you got all those reactions and realizations into your life and so you can see it works. You get answers and everything. And for myself, it was quite an amazing journey. I learned a lot about myself, and I found missing pieces of the puzzle of my life. And since a kid, I had those questions: who am I? Why I am here? And where I am from? And during my travel through the journey, I got the answers on those questions. So in a kind of way, the inner truth of my being was revealed to me, and it gave me a purpose in life and a path to travel on. And as an example, I am a fine artist, and well, you could call me a master forger because I painted all those replicas of the great masters of the Renaissance, like Raphael, Da Vinci, Giotto, and I also made by pencil photographic portraits that were exact copy of the real photo. So yes, it is a quite specialized skill, but it's not really original. And when I start my journey, my artwork changed. I didn't want to make copies anymore of ideas of others. I changed my style completely and I started to make original, unique artworks and made by inspiration to express myself into art. And I also wanted to write a book. I always wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book, a children's book. And so I started to write, well, not actually a book for children, but here is the book.
This is definitely not a book for children, although I think it's a book
No.
for everybody. So in a way, why not? Uh, Also, it's very interesting as well on the whole thing about Egyptian art. That people, I think in the images, in the visual culture of ancient Egypt, there is a mystery as well, right? They kind of encode a lot of the mysteries and we kind of probably miss that because when people try and paint the Egyptian gods and goddesses, sometimes they kind of try and improve upon them from a Western point of view to try and say make them more use our skills, because we're supposed to be so much better at these things, and we get it wrong. I think so often people get that wrong. That you've got to kind of look at their aesthetic and their images in a lot of detail and just absorb yourself in them first. Then, as an artist, you see, you brought together unique skills to do this book. You need the artistic sensibility to produce something like that wonderful cover, but also to kind of, because it is such a visual culture, but you brought this immense intellectual skill and spiritual skill really to sort of take that journey. I say the book, I know I've been involved with publishing it and stuff, but I was completely knocked out by it. I mean, I didn't have voices saying the Amduat, but most of the books that we're involved with, in a way, are all very special to us, right? They kind of have something important to say and to bring back into the world. And your book is in the Egyptian sphere is really going to do that, I think. Well, we better wind up for now, before we come back and talk about it a bit later as well. You have a final thought for us?
Well, I think the Amduat is so beautiful because it's written thousands of years ago and we still can use it. It is still up to date, even in our modern age. So it's kind of a universal work. It's really very, very extraordinary.
Okay, well, thank you very much
Okay, you're
for
welcome.
that
It's my pleasure.
fantastic book.